Welcome to the WAIL podcast. You've seen the commercials, you've seen the offers. iBUYERS are here, and today we are fortunate enough to have Jennifer Arsenault in studio. She is the managing broker for Flotilla Real Estate Partners here in Oklahoma City. Jennifer was recently featured on the front page of the Daily Oklahoman talking about this very topic. It impacts not only homeowners here in Oklahoma, but it impacts homeowners all across the country. Featured on the front page of the Oklahoman regarding iBUYERS, which is a huge topic right now in the real estate world, and it's really impacting people's ability to win in multiple offer situations.
Yeah, dude, it's a big deal. It's making it's disrupting our market to a big extent because the inventory is already low. We already know that. So we've got a lot of people that are selling their homes. They're seeing commercials. They're seeing the open doors, the Redfin Nows, I think, all these other people coming in to making these offers, and we're not 100% sure what is this? Is it a good deal? Is it a bad deal? Is it a real deal? Legit? How does their process work? Should I even mess with it? And only that, people that are in the real estate world is, how is this affecting us? How do we go up against and compete and explain to our sellers and buyers that this is maybe not the way you want to go? Maybe it is. Either way, the point being is that's what Jennifer's here for today, because she's going to clear all that up, which is awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I feel very confident that I will answer every question there
I do
ever
too.
was.
You usually do.
Well, how about maybe start a little bit with your background in the real estate industry?
It's pretty much all I've done since I was 19. So if you need a leasing agent or a property manager or accounts receivable or lead maintenance girl, like
That's you.
here.
That's
Yeah.
you.
I started in 1998 in real estate and moved to selling full-time as a retail residential salesperson in 2007. And then in 2014-15 became a broker and had lots and lots of agents. And I love real estate agents. Yeah. I am one. I've never taken that hat off. And I'm still quite young, obviously. I'm lower 40s range and loving it. So I've been fortunate to get to see several different layers and seasons of real estate. And, the iBuyer sensation, if you will, isn't really anything that's super new. It's been happening for some time. And I think the greater interest for me is around institutional investors and what's happening with that. And iBuyers is almost like a precursor to it. So what an iBuyer is that kind of the question on the table? It's
absolutely. Yeah. What is
instant?
It's
instant. So it's one of those things where a homeowner could say, I think I want to sell my house. And rather than go down the road of having showings and things of that nature, I think I'd like to just have less hassle. I mean, they make it very, very easy and simple. And, what we all know is when there's the easy button, there's typically a price to it.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's the reality of it, is it can be good for some people. And what we found through the research in our local market was that it was, in fact, good for about 30% of the people. And about 70% of the people actually gave some of their equity to the iBuyer, to the company that was giving them the instant offer. So, I think there's always going to be different models to real estate, and we absolutely need that. We need the healthy competition. I think what concerns me about it is that these houses that are being sold to institutional investors, such as hedge funds, big capital money, in this case, the article that we put together was on Open Door, and Open Door's been around for some time. They just happen to be new to our market. Okay. And so I was getting a lot of questions at the end of the year. Hey, what's going on with Open Door? They're here. What's going on? And so I go to they're a publicly traded company. Right. So I went to their website and just kind of took a little look-see, hey, I haven't really paid attention to Open Door in the last couple of years. What have they been doing? I knew that they'd had a substantial market share in the Arizona, Tucson, Phoenix area. And they had not been in Oklahoma yet. So they are the firm that's registered here in Oklahoma City market. They're actually agents that live and work out of the Dallas area in Texas.
I was going to say, when I was in Dallas, when we were down in that office share, they were huge down there.
Yeah.
Or they were at least building up. There was a ton of people working there.
Well, and I think that's what I really want our realtors and real estate professionals in the marketplace to know is I'm never wanting to villainize anyone. I like to study business. And
Sure.
so I go to their website to look at their statistics that they put out, and my mind was blown. So in 2020, their gross revenue, their real estate brokerage now, and their gross revenue was $2.58 million.
Jeez.
That's really good. It's not. I mean, we've
For
got
a
real
startup.
estate teams that do 2, 3, 4 million in gross commissions. So
Right.
it's viable.
That's
Yeah.
a team.
Right.
It's not a nationwide company.
Right. So then we move to the following year,
Yeah.
and we go from 2.5 million in gross revenue to 8 billion. What? 8 billion.
That's
So,
insane.
I mean, yeah, I'm like, okay, this is a real estate brokerage, and we had that kind of leap in 1 year. I need to know more.
Yeah.
They're
right.
doing something right. Maybe they found the new secret.
They're
Who
doing
knows?
something
They're
that
doing
brings
something.
in money.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but
Whose money is it though?
yeah, but I mean, not to even jump in, but what they did to get to that billion is, I don't know that that's relevant now. That was pre-COVID. Am I wrong?
No. This
Is
was
it post?
the end of 2020.
Okay, so COVID
So
was the kind of
they-
the catalyst.
So 2019, they actually were at 4.5 million gross revenue.
Okay.
And then 2020, they dropped, just like a lot of people did,
Sure,
right.
and they went down to 2.5. But 21, they kicked it into high gear and hit 8 billion in
That's
revenue.
insane.
Now, this is according to Open Door.
Right.
You know, I mean, I'm just going off of the statistics that they
What they
provide.
published, right?
Right, since they're publicly
So
traded.
what do we know what that jump was? How did they do that? What was their big catalyst? Because that's a humongous, outrageous jump.
You know, I mean, just plain and simple, I'd like to just say what it is from my purview, and this is my opinion, and
Go
it's
on.
called market manipulation. And so on one side, they can go directly to a consumer, buy the property from them. We went through the tax records, looked at the purchase price that was recorded with the county tax
Right.
assessor, and then saw them immediately turn around and put it for sale on the MLS, and looked at the price difference between what did they acquire it for versus what did they sell the property for. And with that, we saw anywhere from 8%, 11%, 16% difference, right? So there's a little bit of equity, so that could be part of the gross revenue. I know in other markets across the state, when they go and really identify a neighborhood they want to be in, oftentimes they'll buy multiple properties in that neighborhood. They'll pay over list price. And in doing so, I think what people don't realize is, say they come in $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over list price. If they own 15, 20 properties in that neighborhood, now they've effectively raised the value of all of the properties that they own in that
They're
neighborhood.
their own comp.
Right.
They're their
yeah,
own
they're
comp.
creating their own
Yeah.
comps.
They're
yeah.
creating their own comps.
So, I mean, do you find like if you're, let's say if you're just the average realtor, I mean, is this something that's a threat? That's something that's on your radar? Or what do you do if you've got somebody that, let's say on a listing and they're considering either listing it, letting you do your thing, get out and market it and give them the most money possible in the market, or go with Open Door?
I think for me, I really like to see options, and I like to lay out options for people and have them look at all the data and to understand the numbers of what's all comprised in a real estate transaction. You know, I don't know all the nuances of Open Door when they send the offer. You know, I know at one time another company that was doing iBuying, they would send the offer, but in order to receive their offer, you had to sign a listing agreement to move forward. I don't know if Open Door has something like that. I think the greater concern for me is that once these properties are sold to institutional investors, which Open Door shows that they've sold about 22% of their inventory in 2021 to institutional investors, and these are like hedge funds.
Right.
We know those properties are not going to come back on the market.
Right, yeah, they're
That
killing,
portfolio is going to be sold to another investor, and to another investor, and to another investor.
and hence the inventory problem that we're looking at today.
Which was it was coming. You
Right.
know, from 2008, we had so many builders and things like that go out of business. So the gap has been widening for a number of years
Right.
of
Yeah.
where we would have been with building versus where we are.
Yeah.
But then you go and take, 18%, which was actually just came out May 17th from the National Association of Realtors, that 18% of the sales that happened in the Oklahoma market were to institutional investors. We were third in the nation.
That's a lot for our population. I mean, it's outrageous. Because I mean, Texas and a couple of the big states were in, but they're massive.
They are massive, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
insane, and it makes an inventory problem for us. It makes an inventory. I mean, nationwide, it's obviously going to be a problem because that leads into all of our multiple offers. That leads into, for me, I'm in the mortgage world. Our mix of product is, usually pretty stable. Conventional, FHA, VA, government loans. Right now, government loans cannot win. They cannot win.
Yeah.
If you go in with a government offer, FHA, VA, you've got to compete with not only cash, which is already the percentages on that are nuts. Because where's all that money coming from? Why does everybody have money all of a sudden? I don't get it.
They're moving it out of the investments that they've made. A lot of this money, like we said, it's from hedge funds, and they've been investing in real property. As far back, I've seen articles 2015, even before then, that this was happening. I think it wasn't so rampant as it is now. I think my greater concern is when the quote unquote institutional investor says, okay, we've met our quota and we're not going to be putting any more money into real property at this time, then all of a sudden that pressure that's been created in this market, it's close to 20%, stops. And knowing that those houses don't come back on the market, they're going to be sold from portfolio to portfolio, hedge fund to hedge fund, then I think as quickly as the pressure cooker began, is as quickly as it can cool off, and just understanding what that really means. And if the cost to purchase a property to actually borrow money is where it is and continues to increase, I think it can be incredibly detrimental to just the regular neighbor, the next door neighbor. That they own one house and then they go and buy another one house,
Do you think that what some of the iBuyer, like that situation, do you think that's just kind of, and I might be 100% wrong, but we've all been seeing like the I buy ugly houses people, the people that will throw that on the corner that says I buy houses. Is that just magnified to just as somebody with just enormously deep pockets and much better systems to go out and get more nationwide?
Right. Essentially, it is a type of wholesaling where when they purchase the property, their intention in purchase is never to hold it. It's never to live in it. It's simply to acquire the property, to turn it over. Now, whether that acquisition is through assigning a contract where they don't even actually take ownership title, or if it's taking title and then turning and selling it. But there's never anyone else that lives there, right? And so I think that's kind of what that phenomenon is. And to your point, they're just better at it.
So if I'm just kind of thinking out loud, if I'm selling my house, these guys are kind of bringing me a bird in hand type situation, right? If I've got a $200,000 house all day long, no problem. They're saying I'll give you 180, or feel free to put it on the market. You might get you might get 205, but you're gonna have to go through this repairs and all that stuff. That reason why cash offers are getting accepted. They're essentially just cash offers that are even better, but also just massively targeting a huge net of people. Is that in the neighborhood of what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I think what's really going on, and I think what we hear in real estate so often is people are like, heck yeah, I'll sell my house. I'll get more money than I ever anticipated, but where am I going to go?
Right.
Oh, yeah, nowhere.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that's where the resolve is with iBuyer is they say, hey, we're gonna get you out of this current mortgage. You can rent it back from me while you go find the other property. So I think for listing and selling agents to be more flexible in how and not so nuanced with, the day you close on the house you're selling is the day you better be out and have it clean and be at the title company to pick up your new keys. Those dominoes are that isn't something that really happens across the nation the way that it does in our market. And I think making some adjustments and realizing that should we continue to push things to be that way, this one set way, that without the adaptability that's needed, we're going to be pushing our consumers towards these type of options that will, in fact, dig into their own equity. And then, but it makes it simpler, because somebody who's got, kids and you're working and you've got dogs and like showing the house.
Oh, yeah.
Have you guys sold your house before?
Having to light candles, put the dogs in the car and be gone for
you feel like you can't even live there. Like I don't cook dinner in my house whenever I have my house on the market because I don't want it to smell weird.
Yeah.
See, I think that's really good though. Like what you just said really makes, because I can tell you that I've heard of all this iBuyer stuff. I've heard of all these things coming in. John and I were looking in at something called Ribbon early in the week. The title, the business development guy from Title downstairs brought it up to me, and I watched it and I don't understand it, but it makes more sense now. Is there's a new problem and they're solving it,
and that's we live in a capitalistic environment. Like that's what we're based on. So now that we recognize this, we can either continue to give our clients over on a platter by making things so difficult and awful that they look to go find another solution because $20,000 isn't worth the emotional nightmare.
Yeah.
Or we say, okay, Mr. Seller, when we negotiate, we've got 3 offers on the table and we can respond to these. And let's talk about maybe you renting back and staying over 30 days, 45 days after closing. In this market as a buyer, heck yeah, Mr. Seller, you can stay there for 60 days.
As long as I know I
get the house. So being able to negotiate those certain things at the onset, I think is what's critical. Otherwise, we're not making it simple for people. And our job is to absorb the nightmare and dissipate it and help people have a smooth transition.
Yeah. See, this is why I'm happy you're here, because this is a really, really big deal for realtors who are having to combat that, because this is like, for me, like I'm going to use my personal experience here is, you guys know I've been working on my house, doing remodel, all that, and everybody keeps asking, what are you going to do? You're going to sell it? And, I was talking to a friend of mine who's a realtor, and he's like, dude, I could get you $260. I paid not that for it, $185.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, how awesome is that? But then I say, yeah, I would love to. Everybody likes to cash in a good chip, especially, but then where would I go? Just like you said. So if somebody did come to me and says, we're going to give you, you're going to get to sell your house at the historical peak of the entire market in the entire world. And guess what, dude? You don't have to move out. I'm listening.
Yeah, you've got my attention for sure.
But my point, and it's what you just addressed, is how do we, who don't work for Open Door, right? Who are actually local real estate professionals, actual real people. There's a reason why you work local. There's a reason why you buy local. Like, how do we give that same kind of assurance to them? And it's like you said, is because I know you don't like to go too far into it, but you're an amazing coach. You're a business coach. You deal with realtors and help people improve their business every single day of the week. I mean, if they come to you and ask you, I am getting beat down by iBuyers. What do I do? And
well, what have you been doing is my first question. Like, where are we? Where have we been?
I'm doing things exactly the same way before iBuyers came along.
Because this is how we do it. And so I think that's step 1, is to just take a pause and realize that how you've been doing everything may not be the best way to move forward, right? And to be open-minded. Yes, we have these nuances of, the buyer always picks the title company here. Or, well, if you go to Tulsa, they have 2 separate title companies. The seller has one, the buyer has one. There's always these localized nuances that I think people get very attached to, especially if they've been in the industry for some time and they think that's the way it's done. And then anybody that presses against that, for instance, I remember, I want to say it was maybe 2016, 2017. I had an associate come to me and ask me about using an escalation clause. And, we were being told by brokers and even people in positions, even with the real estate commission, that it was not legal. Right. And that just these beliefs that people can get attached to.
It's just
It's
not
something
known.
that hadn't been done.
Yeah.
It had been done across the country forever. And I'm sorry, but anybody can agree to anything. We are not to interject how the parties come to an agreement. And so I allowed that to happen, and we put together appropriate clauses. It wasn't something I was, going out and waving a banner like everyone needs to do this.
Right.
And there is a time and a place
Sure.
that was a strategy that could help the client win the house. I mean, I'm never going to tell someone not to use a strategy that is perfectly legal, absolutely reasonable, and helps everybody have a win-win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How long is this going to last, you think? How long are we going to be seeing iBuyers? I mean, you mentioned something about what happens when they pull back and say we're done.
I think as long as interest rates continue to be on the high,
Right.
Sure.
And cash is going to trump.
Don't say the high.
I'm sorry. I know
This
it's
is
not
the
the
normal.
high. It is.
That
it
was
is.
the abnormal.
Yeah.
Right. It
Okay,
absolutely.
don't get me started.
You're so right. I bought in 2018 was the last time, and I'm at 4.75. And I remember just like in 2020, like, oh, should I refinance?
Yeah.
I bought in 2020. Mine's 2.25.
Yeah.
I know.
Well,
But that is not normal.
it's
No,
not. I mean,
it's
if you go back and look in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was not uncommon for people to be over 6%.
My first
7,
house was,
8%.
we did an 80-20, and it was like a 6% and an 8%
Yeah.
with Countrywide.
And happy
Back
to
in the
get
day.
it. Yeah.
Stated income.
Yeah.
No, I think the important thing that it's really awesome to have you to kind of give us that insight is because when, like I said, we're talking to other people that are combating this, and is just how do we get around it? What does our listing presentation need to change?
Yeah.
When I go sit down with that buyer who says, or if you do even get the listing and they call you up and say, hey, got a call from God knows who, and they're trying to write me a check.
Oh gosh, don't get me started on that company.
I would
There's a
love to
new
get you started
company
on
here. They've got some news articles going on in like Georgia and Florida where they've been reported, and they've opened an office in Broken Arrow. And what's so interesting about it is they are actually, it's in my opinion quite predatory, where they're going and finding homeowners and paying them a cash $500. And so one of what happened in Georgia was they show up with the check, and then they also have a notary there and say, sign this agreement. And the agreement says, okay, you accept the $500 today, and in return, you promise that we will get the listing to list your property if you ever decide to sell in the next 40 years.
Okay.
Wow.
And if you do not use us, you'll owe us 3% or $190 some odd thousand. And in addition to that, they have a mandatory arbitration in there, and it goes on and says, hey, if you pass away or deed the property to somebody
Jeez.
else, this is actually an encumbrance that stays with the property.
What are a few points that you're going to sit down if you were to say, Mr. Seller, here's why you should use me as opposed to an iBuyer?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't start in with that. I'd say let's set it side by side
Right.
and let's look at this with logic.
Okay.
And so what my first tip would be to every real estate professional, and I firmly believe this, get so good at those numbers that you can do it on a napkin.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason that you shouldn't be able to figure out how much it's going to cost to sell or cost to buy on a napkin. And I know there's apps out there, but those apps will often put those numbers together, and you don't understand interest per day and all the variables that through I can negotiate really, really well.
Yeah.
And if I'm going up against somebody who's working off of an app, I understand, I have a greater understanding.
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to negotiate and represent that seller or buyer
That'll be
better.
clear.
Yeah.
So number one, understand the numbers. And number two, don't be afraid to help somebody interpret the numbers that they're seeing alongside the numbers that you see as well. And even having a title company or a lender put some things together for them so that everyone has an even playing field and they can look at things. There's not some big secret of what's
side
really
by
going
side,
on.
apples to
Yeah.
apples type deal.
Absolutely. And then talk about what are their concerns? Because everyone has a different set of concerns when they're going to sell their property. I mean, some people may need to be in another state. They may have people finishing school. They may have family. There's always a different set of circumstances. And so understanding what's most important to them, it may not be the money.
Right. Yeah. What is it?
It may be the
speed,
the hassle. So what is hassling is what I'd say, Mr. Seller, about listing the property. What do you consider the hassle?
Yeah.
Do we need to? I mean, there's auctions that can happen. There's all kinds of different ways to sell a property, and it be local, and it be understood by everybody. So I think just the flexibility would be the third thing of having an open mind.
That's perfect. That's identifying exactly what's going on, because everything is, to me, I say it all the time in our office when somebody does have a problem or some client, it's a seller be sold thing. Figure out what their issues are, just like you said, and dive into it and
make a plan.
Yeah, and be able to explain it better than your competition. Yeah,
absolutely. So. And the only way you can do that is to be a student of the numbers and be a student of contractual obligations, and don't be afraid to look outside of your own bubble.
Yeah. Love that. Yeah. Love leveraging data, understand your client, understand your marketplace, and put those tools in your tool belt. To be
in
successful.
a nutshell, what she's telling you is what everybody needs. Be really good at what you do. Be a pro. If you're in here kind of half-assing it, you got to get better. Yeah. The competition's better. That's perfect. And Jennifer, thank you so much for being here and explaining that, because it's something that I wanted to know. I feel better about it now. Yeah. Thank you for coming by. That's awesome.
Thank you.
And you're our first guest. Did you know that?
I did.
Awesome.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, perfect. All right, till next time.